Dr. Tyler Panzner, welcome to the Biohacker Babes podcast. So excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really excited to shift some perspectives and share some knowledge with you all in the audience.
Yes, you're so
Awesome.
good at that. We were starting to nerd out, and I was thinking, oh, we got to hit record because we may say something that's going to be gold. You have so much wisdom. So we're really excited to talk about bridging genetics with pharmacology. So really focusing on supplements today, because maybe a lot of people are doing themselves a disservice by taking supplements without maybe deeper knowledge. And you do this so beautifully to not only create safety with a supplement routine, but like hyper personalize. And we are always so interested in getting to know the bio individual and making this journey really personalized. I think that's so important. So to kick off, big question. What do you think is perhaps the biggest mistake people are making right now when it comes to supplementation?
Oh, that's a big one, right? That's a big umbrella question there, right? I think it really comes down to, I could say, not getting genetic testing done beforehand, right? I'm in the genetic space, that's what I do. However, I'm not going to go and say that's what everyone needs to do. I think understanding how the supplements work, what they do, right? I'll give you an example. If there's a supplement, we could touch on this. There's dozens of them that slow down the breakdown of adrenaline in the body. That can make you more anxious, right? Adrenaline is the fight or flight neurotransmitter. You don't necessarily need to know the exact genetic mutations that make someone anxious to not recommend or not take a supplement off the shelf for yourself. If you know you're an anxious person, don't take ingredients that raise adrenaline in your body, right? You don't need to know the exact genetics, this mutation, that thing, this, that. If you're prone to stress, overthinking, rumination, probably don't take something that raises the fight or flight neurotransmitter, right? So I think just understanding the pharmacology, right? That's what I do. And, after being a couple of years in this space, there's just no education about this. There really isn't. And, when I say how I had a client come to me from a naturopath or functional medicine and they're all messed up on these supplements, right? I don't mean that any ill will towards the practitioners. There's not proper training out there. I know functional medicine has some training, but trust me on this, it's just the tip of the iceberg because we don't actually study these supplements in the right way. We don't When you study a supplement safety, you take one supplement, give a bunch of people it. Okay, no one drops dead. Great. But how many people only take one supplement? Right?
Never.
I mean,
Not
very,
I.
very rarely they're
Yeah.
taking 5 products, sometimes 10 products, even more that have multiple ingredients that can all synergize. They can synergize and help you even more potently. But if that mechanism or the way that supplement works, if that's a detriment to you, you're going to amplify the side effects as well. So long-winded, but yeah, understanding how the supplements are working in your body.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, that is a big one. And even I'm guilty sometimes. I'm like, oh, I'm taking like way too many supplements right now. I probably need to like trim down. But as far as like supplement interactions, where do people even start with looking with that? Or should they
Yeah.
just like not take any supplements unless they're working with a practitioner that really knows what they're doing?
Yeah, it's tricky. That's something that I, make content about, and I do want to have more educational resources for these things to help map out these interactions, right? And it's hard to find, again, hard to find practitioners that really know the ins and outs of these things. So it's one of those things, it's like, I think that's a problem. I'm working on developing that solution at scale, right? Because it can also get very, very convoluted with things, right? All these different interactions or things they're doing in your body. Well, this supplement, it works for me because it stimulates my GABA system and calms me down, but it also pulls iron out of my body. And I'm borderline anemic, so that's a negative for me. But wait, it also can help lower blood pressure, which is good for me. But wait, it also can pull copper out of the body. So you see, it's like all this tit for tat, the pros and cons within each individual supplement, right? And these are the mechanisms of action or how these supplements work, that supplement that says brain health or mood support, that's an extremely vague statement. How is it helping your mood support? Is it raising serotonin? Is it making you detect serotonin better? Is it a dopamine thing? Is it a blood flow thing? It's very, very vague. And this is how people could take a supplement for their mitochondrial health. They want to biohack that. They take one for a senolytic, right? To get rid of those zombie cells out of their body. They're taking another supplement. I don't know. What's another good thing for, I don't know, just cognition, right? But all three of those supplements are also iron chelators, but you're not going to read that on the bottle. So now you have someone that's anemic, or I've seen people go from healthy iron levels, not even borderline anemic, because they're taking 3 concentrated supplements, all 3 of them lower iron. You'll never see that written on the bottle, right? And a lot of practitioners don't know this. This is how it could be such a slippery slope, right? I'll give you an example of that. Curcumin, resveratrol, apigenin, right? Those are 3. A lot of people don't know that they're iron chelators, right? And then before you know it, boom, you have all these symptoms. You don't really know why, or you're getting iron infusions from your practitioner. They don't know why you're anemic because they're not aware that these supplements pull iron out of the body.
Gosh, and that's
a huge
even a
one.
deeper layer than just what is on the bottle, because I'm seeing a lot of bottlenecks there where people are not cross-referencing even just the ingredient panel, let alone knowing mechanism of action. And
Well, because if you think about that too, it's like, all right, Tyler, what do you suggest to change then? Well, you can't just list every, people are going to be like, it's going to be like gibberish to them, right? Like, I understand you need to understand, the consumer needs to understand these things, right? But I mean, you two can let me know your thoughts on this and be honest. My personal stance on, recommending supplements as an expert. I think anyone should be able to go into any vitamin shop or anywhere online and order whatever over-the-counter supplement they want for their own health. I don't think there should be any restrictions there. However, if you're a practitioner that utilizes your credentials or expert status to recommend natural over-the-counter supplements, I think you should be required to have some sort of certification, whether you're a nutritionist, whether you're a mold coach, whether you're a heavy metals, whether you're a mind. If you are utilizing natural over-the-counter supplements, you should be required to take some level of certification to understand these major types of interactions.
Yes, I think we should push for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the certifications I plan on building, right? But it's like, it's just crazy that, again, that a lot of the practitioners look off the bottle, right? They're looking off the bottles. They're not looking at, again, you're not going to see a lot of these mechanisms written on the bottles, and that's where it gets really hairy.
Yeah. I will say, like, even when I was getting my master's, like, we learned a lot about nutritional supplements. Like, I credit that. And we learned a lot about how those maybe would interact with pharmaceutical drugs, medications.
So were you looking at mainly like the cytochrome enzymes?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we were never taught how different supplements, like natural ingredients, would interact. That was not included
and
in
for
the
you guys
training.
listening, we were talking about like the CYP enzymes, the cytochrome enzymes. Think of these as molecular scissors. These are what break down pharmaceuticals. Now, a lot of natural supplements block these scissors. A common one is CBD. I'm a big fan of CBD. I think it gets, a lot of people take a little microdose of gummy and they're like, I don't feel anything. It's like someone having one sip of wine and saying, I'm not drunk, wine's a scam. It's like, no, you just had literally not a clinically relevant dose, right?
Yeah.
Beside the point, but that blocks the scissors that chew up over 80% of pharmaceutical medication. So you're absolutely right. That's the main supplement training most coaches and practitioners will go through, right? There's that aspect. And I work with people, they're feeling weird. They're overdosing now. That 5 milligrams of whatever their depression medication is, they take CBD. Now it's effectively, an 8 milligram pill, right? And now they're getting all these weird side effects, GI issues, because it's almost as if they took a second pill that day. And at least you understand that, right? But it goes deeper than that too. If you think about it, hopefully this isn't too deep. So we have how quickly we're breaking down the drug itself, right? You take some of these supplements, more of the drug stays in your system. That drug, let's just say if it's say if it's an SSRI, that means more drug. Your brain's gonna have higher serotonin levels. right? And then if you overdo it, that's why people get emotional numbness. They get sexual side effects. They feel very just empty because it's too much serotonin. Then you also have supplements that block the breakdown of the serotonin. So you think about this twofold, right? How much are you affecting the breakdown of your medication? That medication makes you release more serotonin. And if you're taking something like a methylene blue or a curcumin or a rhodiola rosea, these block the breakdown of serotonin after you release it. So you see there's multiple layers of this. You could be overdosing on your medication technically by the dosage in your system. And then the serotonin that it's making you release will also get trapped in your brain. You could get serotonin syndrome. And if you're not like seriously harmed, you could have a lot of, bad days feeling all weird. Does that make sense? Like there's two layers of that, but you're not going to
Yeah.
hear the latter mentioned because it's not, rigorously shown in studies for decades, right? Science moves it seems like it moves fast, but it also moves incredibly slow. They need to have decades or years of all these studies, but you need someone to fund the studies. And they don't really do science just out of curiosity anymore. You need to have the exact monetary gain from it. Who's going to make money by understanding if these over-the-counter supplements can actually affect the medications like that? That makes sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
endless combinations. We'll be here until infinity
Yeah.
trying to test all of these things. It's really wild. So a whole other class of medications that is quite popular right now, GLP-1 drugs. I'm curious
Mhm.
what you're seeing in the interaction with a lot of people that are on SSRIs and GLP-1s. Any advice there or anything that you're seeing clinically?
Yeah, with the GLP-1s, it comes down to the overall signaling strength. And that's just not for GLP-1s, that's any system. So, you'll hear, I'm sure your feeds as well, it's so polarized. I see people saying, microdosing GLP-1s are the future, this or that. And then you have other people saying, like, look at these paralyzed stomachs, these massive lawsuits, all these different issues. Why are there such different responses? Well, what does it do? It helps raise the GLP-1, right? It helps stimulate it. Well, GLP-1 is a protein made by guess what? A gene, right? So I look at the GLP-1 genetics and we could see would someone be a better or poorer responder, right, to the GLP-1? Because not everyone with weight issues is having a GLP-1 issue, right? There's a lot of other factors that are involved with that. So I personally think that the lower the dosage, I do think there are a lot of health benefits to having to utilizing it, but it needs to be at the lower dosages because also people will go up and up in dosages over time, right? So it kind of depends as the body's adapting with these things. What other things are you doing? Are you trying to do as well, right? Are you actually moving your body or are you just relying on the injection to do all of the weight loss there? Um, it does seem to be having some effects on the neurochemistry. Some people that I've worked with and heard this in my sphere about people really having less cravings, not just for foods, but for substances, but for alcohol, and can help people. I've had some people have somewhat of like a nootropic effect where they kind of just feel more like on, right? Now, is that a placebo? Is it because there's less blood sugar spikes? Is it directly boosting that dopamine? We don't know for sure, but it does appear to be that there is a potential longevity benefits to make sure you're maintaining good blood sugar, right? Again, not going crazy with the dosages, but then also appears to be on the neurochemistry in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but any
Wow.
negative interaction with SSRIs? I don't know how GLP-1s interact with.
Yeah, so from my current level of understanding, I'm not aware of any direct like those supplements that I mentioned, the resveratrol or the methylene blue. Those are monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs. So those literally, they actually used to have prescription strength MAOIs years ago. They were pulled off the market for side effects. The side effects were aggression, emotional outbursts, and it's so interesting. If you look at strong medications that do that, you get those effects. That mirrors what we see if people have genetically slow MAO enzymes. Think about it. Whether your enzyme is slow due to your genetics, which it's hardwired to stay there, Or you take a medication that blocks it a lot, or the supplements, hey, they don't block as strong as the prescription medications, right? But they still mimic that. There's studies that show people with these mutations much more likely to be incarcerated, violent criminals, people that have more temper. So it's just so cool, right? You see the patterns, whether it's a genetic suppression, whether it's a medication, or even the supplements. Like me personally, you guys ever heard of piperine or bioperine?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's added to a lot of different supplements because it helps you absorb into your cells many different nutrients. So it enhances the effect. Um, that's an MAOI. So people don't understand they're taking supplements. The supplements themselves may not be marketed as a mood boosting or, a cognitive supplement. Maybe it's helping get you something in for your inflammation, but now you're taking a supplement that slows down the breakdown of all your neurotransmitters. On the plus side, that's elevated mood, right? More dopamine. I'll feel good like that, right? So I will utilize the piperine, very, very low dosages because I have a slow MAO. I'm normally high. I need a very, like these stuff. That's why I'm so sensitive to these things and picked up on these patterns, right? Because I would feel some type of way. I would feel more anxious. And I call it the monkey on your back feeling, where you didn't like guzzle too much coffee. Like there's no actual stressors going on, but you just feel like stressed. You can't be at ease. You go out, you have your day at work, you come home, you eat dinner with your family and you're watching TV and you just literally can't like sit into yourself and like feel present, like the monkey on your back, right? There's just something going on. You're not ruminating about anything. You feel it in your body. A lot of times that comes down to these sneaky MAOIs, these types of supplements that people aren't even registering or connecting. I work with a lot of anxious individuals, sensitive individuals, and the number one skill I tell people if you struggle with an overactive mind, overthinking, is learning to understand what is your internal biochemistry and what's an outside trigger. What I mean by that is, let's just say if I could clone myself. We have Tyler 1 and Tyler 2. Both Tylers are going to get a nasty email from somebody or a nasty comment or DM, right? Something really nasty that just triggers me, right? So, an hour or two from now, we're both going to get triggered. External trigger is going to happen. Tyler 1 just goes about his day and it happens. Tyler 2 took a supplement with piperine that morning. So I'm going throughout my day. I'm having a good day. So all that serotonin and dopamine I'm releasing, it's lingering even longer. It's making fun funner. That's how these things can work in the right scenarios. But then that Tyler gets the nasty email. I'm triggered. I start releasing adrenaline. Guess what? That gets magnified as well. So then for the rest of the day, I'm triggered. I'm short. My wife, she could pick up, she'll notice she's like, did you take piperine today? It's very like, so like, I'm an easygoing, nice guy. She could kind of like, she'll come in and try to say something to me, whatever. And sometimes I'll it's the piperine doing that, right? Just a little bit short. She's like, oh, like, what'd you take today? Like, it's subtle. It's not like I'm being nasty, but it's just that little bit of shortness, those subtle little changes there. But I understand this is what I work with people one-on-one to figure out. For you to learn, for you to understand your internal biochemistry, you need to know these types of patterns because are you really that stressed from life, or did you just take supplements that are like they're pre-coiling the spring almost, right? Like the nervous system is already brimming with neurotransmitters, and then a little inconvenience and it's and then you have the bigger reaction, and then I don't know, you're going to make food, you stub your toe, that all these little things can build up. So you kind of see how these things can snowball. So understanding external trigger, that's real. But, if any of you guys listening take a lot of supplements and next time you get triggered, like I would notice for myself when I was piecing this together, it's like I feel like I'm at DEFCON 5 with a threat. Like I am like so dysregulated. But then I'm thinking about it in the moment and I feel horrible, but it's only a DEFCON 1 or 2 insult, right? It's like, why do I feel like absolute crazy fight or flight? I hear my heartbeat when it wasn't really that big of a deal, but my body's reacting that way. Because again, You squirt out, you dump the neurotransmitters, the adrenaline during stress only, it gets trapped by these supplements.
Wow. Okay.
Fascinating and terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna need you to check my supplements and my genetics. So, how much of this is determined by genetics versus, your lifestyle, other things, other factors?
Yeah. Hard to put an exact number on it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is a thing with the genetic space is just because you have a mutation in a gene doesn't inherently mean you're doomed. Like I'll give you an example, right? There are mutations that can make MAO faster or mutations that can make it slower. So if it makes it faster, then you're more prone to lower neurotransmitters. Sometimes, not always, more like the inattentive ADD, right? Can't really latch on to things. Then you have people on the slow. That's more of the more sensitive, more hyperactive, right? Because you have more of these neurotransmitters. But what if you have both? What's the net effect, right? So this is why genetic testing, if you get tested for like 20 mutations, that's literally nothing, right? There's thousands of mutations for any one gene. So how do you know the overall net effect? All three of us here have mutations linked to higher estrogen. We have mutations linked to lower estrogen. It all depends. How many do you have going this way? How many do you have going that way to find your genetic set point? And if you have a lot more on one side, right? And this is what I call like a biochemical bottleneck, right? If you have a lot of mutations in this one area, this hot spot, that molecular step, that cog in your machine really does not work very well. And that's kind of how I view these things is we all have millions of mutations. No one can ever support all of them. You can only take so many supplements, right? No one can take all of them. How do we know the top priority? That's what's missing in the genetic space. It's like, oh, here's 300 pages. Here's 80 supplement recommendations. Have fun with that. People are
Yeah.
like, what in God's name do I do with this? So that's why I I find the most broken cogs. And my perspective is on genetics is find the biggest missing pieces, the most broken cogs that can be supported naturally, and then support the biggest weak points first, right? Because again, we're limited with how many things there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
that. As I've gone through my own genetic reports, a lot of things are contradictory. So it's almost like, in
Yeah.
my opinion, it seems like it cancels it out. So I'm always
Yeah.
prioritizing. But then I like reflecting back on lab work to see what's expressing. Are you always doing lab work, or is that sort of an ancillary check?
Yeah, I mean, I strongly encourage, blood work with anyone that I work with. And I'll do some intracellular micronutrient testing, but I don't do people upload, Dutch tests, GI. I'll cross-reference those things, right? And the one thing I tell my clients is, if I don't know something, I'm not going to make it up. I didn't realize when I started seeing clients, the feedback I got was, "Oh, it's so great to hear a doctor that says I don't know." And I'm like,
Yeah.
is that rare? I didn't realize that was like a really rare thing, but it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I
hey,
think
I'm not a medical doctor by training, right? I'm a PhD scientist, right? So I have a skill set that majority of medical doctors won't have, but there's also stuff that I'm not sure about, right? So I'm not gonna pull something out of my ass and just kind of say it just to avoid looking like I don't know something. There's a lot of stuff I do know that other people don't, right? But you
Yeah.
mentioned so there's a genetic component, right? Um, my belief, and I hope throughout my career to prove this, I believe genetics matter a lot more than they're given credit for. It's that they're not mapped out and analyzed properly. And then it's one thing to know the genetics, right? But how do you know to use the right tools? Genetics is basically useless if you don't understand pharmacology, because that supplement you're giving for your MTHFR or for some other gene, it's also, I just like giving the iron chelator example, but it's also an iron chelator. So, hey, I've seen reports that say, take this supplement for your inflammation. The next line of report says you're prone to low iron. Literally, the supplement that was recommended for your inflammation lowers iron. Why are you recommending that? Because these genetic testing companies have no idea around supplement pharmacology. So it's like trying to build a house when you know the plan, you have the blueprint, but you have no idea how to use your tools, it's basically useless. And that's why so many people are like, I did it, it didn't do anything, or I felt worse, because you need the pharmacology knowledge. The genetics just guides you, right? You don't just look at gene, like you need some sort of treatment plan. Treatment means you're treating your cells, you're changing their behavior. That's literally what pharmacology is, right? It's not just through drugs. Anything that alters, my definition of a drug is anything that alters physiology. And that's a very strict definition of it. With that definition, your magnesium glycinate, that's a drug, right? Like it is, if you ask me. It's not drugs, or they all interact. You got to make sure they're interacting the right way for you.
Yeah. Just a quick follow question, something personal to both of us. Renee and I both in genetic reports often come up with hemochromatosis genes, like several of them. Yet we both tend to be anemic. So
Interesting.
supplementation, we could both assume without knowing anything else, like, oh, maybe we need to avoid heme iron from food, or maybe avoid cast iron, X, Y, and Z. But that's not actually expressing in our body. So without even bringing in a supplement, there's some conflicting information here.
Yeah, you say not even expressing, right? Which could be possible, right? And this is why I think too, it's the effect size of these things, the hereditary hemochromatosis genes, but are there maybe other genetic factors that aren't being tested or mapped out properly that are pulling it the other way, right? My wife has the hemochromatosis genes and most of her blood work is elevated. So guess what? I have her take curcumin a good bit of the time, especially if we're eating more red meat, which we do enjoy, right? So it's like, it's not that these are universally bad. If you're someone with high iron, that could be amazing for you. It's just knowing the time and place. But back to one of the things that you mentioned, Renee, genetics, that's your set point, right? Much as I'm a genetics junkie, they're not all that matters, right? Any influencer or coach or doctor that says their way or their angle is all that matters, massive, massive red flag. They're all different components here. Now, foods are another big factor. I call them excitatory foods. So, the brain has gas pedals and brake pedals. So a lot of people have heard about histamine before. That's really common nowadays. And for you guys listening, histamine is released during allergies, through an allergic reaction pathway, but it's also used in the brain to wake us up, to drive focus, to drive alertness, and elevated histamine signaling. Elevated histamine in the body is linked to anxiety. They did studies where they injected people with pure histamine. The first thing that happened at the lowest dosage was increased heart rate and anxiety. That was the first symptom. As they injected more and more and more and more, you got the heart palpitations, you got brain fog, you got migraines, all the symptoms that are linked to histamine issues, right? It makes sense, right? But the fact that the first symptom at the tiniest elevation, even within what a normal person would have. So we're not talking about, oh, let's just like juice them up with quadruple histamine. No, even within the normal range of a human, that slight elevation caused anxiety in people. So antihistamines help with allergies. They help with sleep. That's what Benadryl is. That's what ZzzQuil is. That's what NyQuil is, right? So elevated histamine revs up the brain, can stimulate people. Makes sense, right? So, there's the higher histamine foods. There are certain supplements that can raise that histamine. So I'll just give you an example, right? Someone wakes up, they have their cup of black coffee in the morning. They have a shot of apple cider vinegar, and then they fast for a bit, right? Coffee, high in histamine. Apple cider vinegar, high in histamine. Then they go and exercise. Exercise releases histamine. Now, that's not like a bad thing, right? It's just what our body does, right? So there's no working around that. But then they have headaches or brain fog or they're anxious all day. They think they did the right thing. They have their mold-free, mycotoxin-free, crazy, crazy super duper price, pure coffee, but it has nothing to do with the quality. It's the histamine in the coffee. It's the histamine in the vinegar. It's the exercise, right? So this is how these foods can do this. But tomatoes release histamine. I know I don't do well with tomatoes. And a couple months ago, my wife made some red sauce with some chicken and pasta she made. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'll have like a little bit. Like I'll be fine. I don't know why sometimes, even all that I know, sometimes I think science just turns off and doesn't matter, right? I'm like, oh, I'll be fine, right? It's just
Mind
some
over matter.
tomatoes, right? Like it's what, yeah, exactly. Mind over matter, right? I had it. I went to bed like an hour later. I woke up 2 a.m. like wired, like wide awake, like I guess you call it a little bit not like panicking, but like wide awake, like I just had a shot of espresso. I'm ready to go to the gym. Like wide awake, like what the heck? That was from the histamine being released in my body from the tomatoes. Now, some of my clients, they've gotten off of their sleeping medications by getting them off of the tomatoes for dinner. Now, I could go on Instagram and say, this will get you off of all your sleeping meds universally, right? But we know that's not how it works. It depends on the person. I have a hard time breaking down histamine in my gut genetically. So I'm very sensitive to these things. So there's that. There's things like glutamate, things like sulfur. Sulfur can also release histamine. So if I have garlic or onions, I will feel within minutes my mind starts getting activated, right? I'm not anxious. I'm not fearing something in the future, but I feel like there's a threat. But there's thought-driven anxiety where, scary thought, that drives the paranoia, that drives the feelings in the body. Then there's more physically driven. And again, the monkey on your back feeling, right? So imagine if I had piperine and then I had a high sulfur meal. The sulfur is going to release histamine. Histamine releases adrenaline, and then it gets trapped. So you kind of see how my brain looks at these things, how these individually seemingly minor things can all really stack up for somebody and make a significant impact on them. So, yeah, we mentioned the genetics.
Yeah.
There are food related things as well. Of course, we know trauma is a huge one, but we don't got to dive into that one there. But yeah.
Question about the sulfur issue, because I definitely feel better on a low sulfur diet, although I don't enjoy it because
Yeah.
I love
Garlic and onions are delicious.
they go well with everything.
Yeah.
I love cruciferous veggies. Like it's so hard for me to cut those out. But with that, how much of that is genetics, or is it like just your gut microbiome being off, or anything else?
Yeah, it could absolutely be both. So
Okay.
the two main genes I look at, there is the CBS gene that's involved in methylation. That dictates how much sulfur your body makes. We'll kind of keep it surface level. How much sulfur the body makes, or sulfites are technically the reactive molecule that can be problematic for people. And then the SUOX gene, that's what breaks down sulfites into sulfates. Sulfates are great for phase 2 detoxification of the liver. So you have sulfur, sulfites, that's the reactive one that releases histamine. And then you have sulfates, which are good. They're non-reactive. So the genetics, again, it depends how mutated the genes are. So let's just say there's the two genes here. If you have no mutations in either, then a lot of it, if you have a lot of sulfur issues, microbiome things, molybdenum is a really good nutrient that helps fuel that SUOX gene, right? That's what helps. It needs it to work. You could be deficient in molybdenum. It's stripped from our soil a lot nowadays. That could be a factor for you. But if you also have more of these genetic mutations, I have a lot here, and I still react to the garlic, even a little bit of garlic or onions, similar to the tomato story I gave you guys. I normally do like the pre-made meal prep things. They're pre-cooked. I throw them in the air fryer. And I got a new one that was ground beef, white rice, and cheese. I do fine with those foods. I'd have them for dinner. My head would feel kind of weird. My wife was again kind of like, ooh, you seem kind of like short. Like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I just did the normal stuff today, whatever. A couple days of doing this, wasn't sleeping well. As I'm eating with my fork, there were tiny, tiny, tiny diced onions, which once they're cooked, they're clear. So even those
Sneaky.
little bit of diced, it wasn't a massive, even that little bit in the evening for me, it triggers me. So I have a lot of mutations there in that detox, that SUOX gene. So you can add more molybdenum, but once that gene has enough molybdenum, adding more isn't going to make it work better, right? It's like once it has all the tools it needs, there's a limit on how much you could do. So if you have a lot of mutations there, and this is why it's not, I have a mutation. It's how much more do you have than the average person? How significant is this? You can have a minor genetic driver for sulfite sensitivity. And then maybe, hey, you're depleted in molybdenum. Glyphosate depletes molybdenum out of soil, depletes it out of our bodies, right? So you see how there's all these infinite flavors going on. Do you have a lot of genetic issues with that? And then you're exposed to glyphosate. Are you not having molybdenum? Are you having too much copper, which can deplete molybdenum? So all these factors here. But of course, it's never just genetic. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. For some people, they can have good gut health. They're taking molybdenum and they're just eating so much sulfur. They're having glutathione supplements. They're having sulforaphane. They're having alpha lipoic acid, a lot of mitochondrial detox supplements, right? That functional medicine recommend like candy. 98% of the time, I take people off of the NAC or off of the glutathione because they're having the detox symptoms. Well, detox symptoms are the same thing as sulfite sensitivity symptoms because they both involve histamine, right? Detox, histamine.
Wow.
Sulfur releases histamine. So the brain fog, if I even smell N-acetylcysteine, like I get a headache. Not literally, but like I'm so sensitive to it because again,
Yeah.
my gene will always struggle. So even though my histamine issues are light years better than they used to be, that used to be my main chronic issue for me, that histamine intolerance. I still need to be careful. Like if I'm going out to eat and there's a big, huge red onion ring, right? Like on the burger, like I just know I got to take that off. Otherwise, I'm going to be grouchy, irritable. Yeah.
Wow.
That's the
Okay.
headline. Is
Am I,
the
am I,
onion
am I going too deep too much? Like I'm
No.
trying to give the picture here. It's a different
Yeah.
perspective on things. And hey, I'm not going
Yeah.
to sit here and say that this is the only way, this or that, right? It's just through my lens of my unique education, my career path, and after working with hundreds of people, are these things life threatening? No. But are they life impacting? Absolutely. Right. Like, again, someone's having their glutathione supplement in the morning, they're having eggs in the morning. Um, those are both rich in sulfur, right? Then they're having a bunch of cruciferous vegetables. They're good for estrogen detox. And then, hey, their doctor throws them on a concentrated garlic pill for their blood sugar and cholesterol. So you see, like, no wonder why you have screaming headaches all the time. You don't need a pharmaceutical medication for it. You either need more molybdenum to help you process the sulfur and or don't gobble up highly concentrated supplements, right? The supplements are usually more of a problem for people because it's so concentrated.
Yeah, more
Yeah.
than absolutely.
And
No,
people just think it's safe because it's a natural supplement.
Exactly. And this is how I view things, the pathway by pathway, right? Like I made a course about the histamine pathway, a course about the sulfur pathway, lining out all these different things, right? Then you have well water is usually very high in sulfur. So work with clients that live, out in more rural areas. Then they're getting a lot of sulfur through there. So all these things that can add up in very unique ways for each individual. And hey, they're not like, are they going to be causing disease? Not really what I'm saying, but I just really focus
Yeah.
on making people feel better.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
That's what
awesome.
we want.
That's absolutely what we want. I mean, all these little annoyances we have.
Yep.
I have to ask you about methylation because it's so buzzy, particularly MTHFR. We were talking
Yeah.
before we hit record. And I'm seeing the solution to anyone that has been told they have an MTHFR SNP and maybe they only get tested for 1 or 2 or 3 is just to take more B vitamins,
Yep.
methylated vitamins,
Yeah.
without looking at the entire cycle or at other potential genetic SNPs that feed into this pathway. What are we missing? What do we need to know? I just feel like I'm so tired of hearing it.
Yeah, I'm tired about hearing about it too. There are so many pages out there that their entire page is just all about MTHFR. And hey, it has a pretty large effect size clinically, right? Like there's a lot of other methylation mutations that are linked to similar health issues, right? But MTHFR, is it the most important or is it by far the most studied, right? Really important discernment to make there. Now, yeah, everyone and their mom is talking about it, right? A lot of people that come to work with me, oh, I have the mutation. I'm like, hey, I have two as well. It is last night I had a consult call with a client. He was the first client I've seen in a while that literally had zero MTHFR mutations. Like that's how common it is, right? But
Yeah.
some of the people I work with are really healthy. They're like, just want to really biohack and really optimize cognitively. And then they may have more MTHFR mutations. And then someone else that comes to me with mold, chronic illness, they only have one mutation there. Their MTHFR gene works 80% as well as it should. This person works 20, yet they're fine and not sick. So that's not the cause of the disease, right? It's a factor that comes into play here. But again, there's the genetics knowledge. Then there's the pharmacology knowledge. A lot of people, millions of people at this point, know the genetics of MTHFR. They know what it does, right? You can't methylate folate, vitamin B9 as well. So intuitively, you can't create the methylfolate, take more methylfolate and fix that. Well, what's the problem with that? Methylfolate has those methyl groups. These are like molecular tags, right? They could change our DNA expression. They can make neurotransmitters. They help us make glutathione. They help us break down neurotransmitters. Now, one of those neurotransmitters is adrenaline. And in order to turn noradrenaline into adrenaline, so think of noradrenaline as it's a neurotransmitter that's released all the time at low levels, kind of like dopamine, that drives intense focus. That's what nicotine elevates. It elevates noradrenaline. That's why people say it helps cognitively with focus. Things like Adderall can do that as well. Stimulants do that as well. But the sorry, what was I just saying? Just completely lost my train of thought.
Noradrenaline.
The noradrenaline to adrenaline, a methyl transferate. You need to methylate that. So you see, you have these methyl groups from these vitamins: methyl B12, methylfolate, trimethylglycine, also called betaine, right? Those are some three really common ones. They have these methyl groups. And if you give your body more of them, yeah, you're going to make more neurotransmitters, including adrenaline. And if you're like me, genetically slow adrenaline breakdown, more prone to overthinking, like that can be really, really bad. That's one of the top mistakes I see people make. They're on ungodly high doses of methylfolate or methyl B12. There's the dosages that are insane, right? But then it's just the fact that they're methylated.
Multiple different bottles that all
Well, now everyone loves sneaking in little methylcobalamin here, little
Yeah.
methylfolate here. Oh, it's only
I hate
20% here. It
And a
just
little
adds up.
curcumin. Everyone wants to throw curcumin in their products now.
Exactly. And then, hey, we need piperine for the absorption, right? And there you go. Just there, we already recreated highly methylated supplement. You're going to make more adrenaline. Oh, and let's just trap it in your brain too, right? With the piperine or the or whatever else is in there, right? So I really like folinic acid is a methyl-free form of folate. That's what I utilize for myself. Like I said, I have 2 MTHFR mutations, and I tolerate that so much better. And again, the dosages are so crazy, and it's not genetics is not if this then that. Again, you need to understand the pharmacology. How sensitive are you to those methyl groups, right? And it can sneak up on you really quickly. Like the betaine or trimethylglycine, that's mainly used and marketed for digestive support. They attach it to a hydrochloric acid molecule, so it gives you more stomach acid. Seen so many people over methylation, right? Too much B12, too much methylfolate. You're overdoing it. Too much neurotransmitters. The brain is overwhelmed. Well, people are popping these digestive enzymes like candy. They're told to take 1 or 2 or 3 of them with every meal. They're looking at, from their perspective, betaine HCl. They're looking at HCl, right? That's what they're focused on. They're like, oh, betaine, schmetaine. I'm taking it for the HCl, right? I look at that and say, betaine, trimethyl, 3 methyl groups, 3 for 1 special. What does that mean? Much better at promoting methylation, helping to bring down that homocysteine, right? A blood marker of methylation, but also triple the risk for overstimulation if someone's sensitive, right? Because it's not just 1 methyl group. There's 3 for each glycine molecule. So
but TRT is not always combined with the HCl. Is that right?
It's not correct. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But most of what you'll see. Yeah. So they do have, Yeah, because for some people, if they don't need the HCl, it could cause stomach irritation, right? You're getting extra stomach acid. So you're absolutely right. It's formulated without it, but the one people make mistakes with, right? You're not gonna, well, you're taking a betine or trimethylglycine on its own, you're gonna see that marketed for heart health methylation. But you throw the HCl on there, now it's marketed for, and hey, it does help with stomach acid. It does help with digestion. But if you're not careful, you're gonna be over methylating, right? Again, it's all about perspective. I'm taking this for my stomach acid. I'm taking the methyl B vitamin for my MTHFR. Well, guess what? They're both contributing to the same system, and now you're over methylating there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And signs that people
Wow.
are over methylating, anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety, like rumination, like really just like thought looping, around things. Those are the main ones that you see in people there. And it's just sad because MTHFR is important. It's the first gene I talk to people about because everyone wants to know about it, but it's really just been acting like that's the only thing. You take your methylfolate, it fixes everything. Then you get into the whole aspect of what heals you is never what keeps you healthy. So yeah, you start your methylated vitamin. I hear this a lot. I started on the methyl Bs. I felt great. Then I nosed I felt horrible. Well, your body doesn't need that much methylation support all the time. And this is why you need to monitor these things over time. If you were chronically sick and you're taking like 50,000% of your daily dosage of B12 in a methylated form to get you out of, a mold illness or something like that, once you're healed from that, you probably aren't going to need 50,000% of your daily B12 every single day, right? But that's the thing where people aren't really monitoring or taking into account the nutrient requirements to change. Sometimes I'll take a multi that has some methylfolate and I'll notice, ooh, I'm in like a super good mood, but only for a few days. Then it turns into anxiety, right? Because you want to kind of fill the stores, but not be overflowing.
Yeah, great. Makes sense.
Okay. I got to triple check some of my stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually remember, gosh, maybe like 13 years ago, SpectraCell came out with this add-on to their micronutrient test where you could test for ApoE and MTHFR, but just those two.
Mm-hmm.
But back then like everything was like, oh, it's all about these two
Yeah.
genes. But now we
Yeah.
know like there's so much more. So my
Yeah.
question for you is when it comes to testing, I think I even heard you say, like, for those of us that did 23andMe maybe a decade ago, we can't maybe use that raw data anymore because it wouldn't have looked at all the genes we now know we should be looking at today. Like, what should we be testing and where?
Yeah. So the genetics never change, right? So like whatever they
Right.
tested back then, that'll still be the same data you get. But you're right, anything, well, I think there's been a couple different versions. I think there's version 5 or 6 of the 23andMe chips at this point for testing. Um, when I work with people, I could take that raw data and utilize it. And I utilize the Self Decode company. They handle my genetic testing. Um, we could touch more on this. Their polygenic risk scoring. Remember what I mentioned with the
Yeah.
net effect, right? That's the future of genetics. It's incredible. They're amazing. Their privacy is great, but the pharmacology knowledge, right? Tying it all together. That's why I take that information. I hand make my reports right now. That's what I've been doing because that's really what distills it down for people. What do you really need to know? And what's just kind of fluff, right? Like you don't want all this fluff. Oh, all the stuff you don't have, all these things that are red and yellow. You're like, is that a big deal? You don't really know. You just see red. You get nervous. You don't know what's going on, right? So the that raw data can be used, but there's certain key areas that aren't assessed. So some of the other companies that give the raw data that can be uploaded to Self Decode, and they have proprietary software that gets a lot more data. They can impute missing data points based on what's existing in there. But I recommend just ordering, like I order the test for my clients, and yeah, not to plug myself here, but that's why I do what I do for the genetic testing and order that through them. They do 200 million mutations. Now, do we know what every single one of them does? No, not even close yet, right? But it's there. We have that data and it's being mapped. Like I'll give you an example, oxalates, right? They can cause kidney stones. They're in a lot of different foods. They could cause joint issues, inflammatory issues. Their polygenic risk scoring for that report is 817,000 SNPs or mutations, just relating to oxalates.
Whoa.
So 816,000 mutations with peer-reviewed evidence that they are linked to higher oxalate load in humans, right? So think about that for a second. So when someone says, oh, I got 300 mutations checked, I'm like, that's cool, I guess, right? But it's a
Yeah.
completely different tier there to make sure. And when those individuals, that comes up for an individual, I ask to start that part, do you have a history of kidney stones in your family? And I'd say 8 out of 10 times they're like, yeah, I do. And then we go into why, right? The more data you're looking into it, there's going to be less people that show up with that. But the people that do show up with that, right? It's a lot more accurate. So I can take the old 23andMe data, but the kits themselves are $200. So I tell people, like, I could do that. I would hate to miss some key parts just over a $200 DNA kit, though, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's tricky out there, and it all comes down to what you consider evidence, right?
Mhm.
Especially with a lot of these things when you might have to read between the lines with certain things, right? Some mutations are very, very well studied ad nauseum in humans, right? But I mean, hey, I'm curious what your two thoughts are. Like, if there are studies that say, there's a gene in mice, a gene mutation in mice, or a supplement works in mice for anxiety, like, I guess what level of evidence do you guys need for you guys to say, hey, I could source that supplement and I'm going to try that for myself, even though it's based on mouse data. Everyone's different. Some people want to wait for the human stuff. Some people are kind of more exploratory like that. And again, this is assuming there's a verified, clean, pure source. Like you're not going on the dark web to go and buy some random niche thing.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
piques interest for me to start learning more about it.
Mhm.
I can't say I would ever go like click order right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would start just like an exploratory process for
Yeah.
sure, which I'm learning to do more and more with all my supplements. And I'm
Yeah.
curious about self decode because Renee and I have both used it. I like it.
Hmm.
I found even conflicting advice in what they recommend for supplements. For example, I have ApoE34. Curcumin is like number one recommended supplement. I know I don't do well with curcumin, but I
Hmm.
didn't know that back in the day.
Hmm.
I'm assuming you're then taking that report and using your expertise to suss that out.
Yeah, regarding the ApoE4, what that really does is that it shifts the types of phospholipids, transported in the body, transported to the brain. So that can result in more LDL particles, right? It's like the higher cholesterol, but it also it shifts the ratios. So more LDL can mean less phosphatidylcholine. So for example, there's been studies where we know that choline supplementation helps in mice with Alzheimer's, it helps in humans with Alzheimer's. And there was a study that came out where they took human cells, that were ApoE3, they did CRISPR to edit the DNA and make them ApoE4 brain cells now. I believe they were astrocytes in the brain. Well, they were in a petri dish, right? So you had the same cell that was mute. The only difference from ApoE3 to ApoE4, what did they saw? They saw a bunch of lipid droplets forming inside of the cell. The plasma membranes were all messed up. They treated the cells with phosphatidylcholine and it completely abolished all of that. So my line of thinking is we have that. We know that choline is amazing for Alzheimer's, right? So yeah, the ApoE4 there. You also have things like the PEMT gene that means you can't make phosphatidylcholine as well. So
I
you
have
see
that.
someone with
Yeah.
ApoE4, then you have see someone with PEMT. They can't make as much
Oh, yeah.
phosphatidylcholine
That's
lower,
exactly us. Yeah.
right? Yeah. That's a really common one. And that's the PEMT gene. That's really cool because it's highly polymorphic, meaning I check up to 16 mutations on there. So if you have one or two, your test may say you have 2 out of 2 mutations. You're sweating, right? You're all worried, right? I have 2 out of 2. I have all of them. Well, what if you look deeper? You only have 2 out of 16. The average person I see has maybe 4 to 6 around there. So if you're really a true two, you're doing great. Do you really need all that phosphatidylcholine? I just had a client that had 12 last night, And I was like, oh my God, like you probably need a double or triple dose of that phosphatidylcholine because again, it's not if you have the mutation, right? How many do you have there? But yeah, the ApoE, I really like the phosphatidylcholine for ApoE4. But again, where people like, where's the exact study that shows that exact thing? It doesn't exist. It's connecting the dots of all, and that's how my brain works. And that's how I've been working with people. And it works for a lot of people, right? So yeah, the curcumin, like you mentioned, I'm trying to think if there's any direct data on curcumin with the ApoE4, but again, you got to cross reference. So when you said you don't do well on it. Is that based on how you felt on it or based on another test that you had that told you it's not good for you?
Trending towards anemia when I'm taking a lot of curcumin.
Yeah. Okay. So check. Yeah. So yeah. So exactly. You need to cross reference the boxes. Are you prone to anxiety? How's your iron? How's your copper? Curcumin also affects DHT, dihydrotestosterone. So if you're someone with low DHT, that you may not do so well on that either, right? So you're right. And kind of how I mentioned, self-decode's great. Their technology is the best around. Just the presentation can be a bit overwhelming because there's just so much information there. And that's, hey, I wouldn't even call that like a horrible thing, right? But it's tricky for someone that's trying, for the average person, it is tricky. It can be overwhelming. And then again, the pharmacology expertise. It's not mapping all those things out, and you experience that for yourself.
Okay.
So much to sort through. So much.
Yeah.
We're getting the pieces. Renee, do you have a question? Because I got one more. I have
No.
one more time.
I know. I'm so curious I know what you're going to ask.
Psychedelics.
Yeah.
Love to know, how are we looking at this with genetics? I personally did a genetic psychedelic test a few years ago. And at first I was like, like my experience with psychedelics, it didn't really quite match up. But I did have an interesting one with ketamine where I break it down very slowly. And I just think this is perhaps really valuable information we should have because there's an explosion of microdosing, even macrodosing, even party dosing irresponsibly. Like people should do these things, right?
Yeah. And hey, there is the responsible party dosing too, right? There's all these different flavors, this or that, right? But yeah, I'm a really big advocate. You know, they've helped me in so many different ways for myself, not just understanding myself, but shifting perspectives, right? You know, if you look back in history, you know, most of the massive scientific technological advancements came from scientists that were utilizing psychedelics, right? The double helix structure of DNA, that was on an acid trip, right? Watson and Crick, they came out, they revealed that way after the fact, right? So it's
even Whole Foods. Did you know the idea of Whole Foods?
Yes, I did see that.
He was on LSD.
Yep.
LSD.
Yep.
So much art, technology. It's like,
I mean, hey, depending how deep you want to go, even if you look back, you look into religion, there's indications of, we know that Incas, Aztecs, Mayans, they literally have mushroom structures everywhere. That's very, very, you know, in your face, right? Then there's hints that the burning bush in the Bible was a species of acacia tree that's higher in DMT. You have the soma in Buddhism that was likely cannabis or maybe some other psychedelic, right? So they're all littered. It's not a new thing. Ketamine's a new thing, right? That's a synthetic, you know, substance, right?
But they weren't doing genetic testing back then.
No.
Why is it more important now?
You know, I think part of it now is the mental health epidemic that's happening, right? I'm sure there was a lot of different unique things to be depressed about back in ancient times, right? But nowadays it's just, you know, the comparison on social media, like that was, you know, all the fear. We were not evolved to hear about all the negative stuff going on all around the world, to hear about everyone's problems all the time. It's an activator of someone's nervous system. I don't care who you are, you may not be perceiving it, but it's downloading that programming, right? Like that's why, you know, I tell my mom all the time, stop watching the news, right? Because it's all designed to get you in that loop. So you keep coming back to find the new negative thing to trigger you, right? You know, it's especially when you're doing these things in a clinical setting, right? The goal is to get these into the clinical setting so more people can have access to it. They don't got to go ask their older brother's friend to get some mushrooms, right? You don't know the concentration of the psilocybin that's in those mushrooms. They could vary, I think, over tenfold based on different species. So you may think You may think
Great.
you're taking a gram or two, right? And then you're really taking the equivalent of 10 grams, and then you're on Mars, right? Um,
Yep.
but the genetics
Yeah.
are incredibly important to find the right starting dosages, especially for things like the psilocybin or LSD, because that's a longer experience, right? The duration of ketamine, it's a lot shorter, right? And hey, that is so incredibly well studied because it's been FDA approved since the 70s, right? There are millions and millions of people every single day getting doses of ketamine that are far higher than what you get in psychedelic experiences because, it's it's a dissociative, right? You have the quote K-hole, right? But what's beyond the K-hole, right? If you were in a K-hole and by some way you were able to ingest more ketamine, what happens? You go asleep, right? Because past the K-hole is anesthesia. That's that's
Right.
that's what's after that, right? It's not death. It may feel like that, right? But it's just anesthesia, right? And then these people wake up. So people that are getting anesthetic ketamine dosages, they're getting far more higher doses of ketamine than virtually anyone that's doing it for the mental health benefits. So we know it's very, very safe. To the genetic aspect, the classical psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, DMT, 5-MeO DMT, those derivatives, they stimulate that serotonin 2A receptor. I call that the trippy receptor. That's what causes the warping visuals. That's what causes the really profound shifts in consciousness. That's what can cause, the psychosis, right? Like if you go too far, right? It's opening you up, right? It's lifting the veil. Um, that's mutated, can be mutated in people. Now, mutation can go either way, right? Back to the rope tugging, right? If you go towards it doesn't work as well, that is linked to depression. So you're not able, what that basically means is you're not able to microdose. Well, let me back up. That receptor, what does it do normally in the brain? Your brain releases serotonin, which binds it. Your brain also releases DMT, which binds it, right? At least when you dream, you release these things. So basically, if that receptor is mutated and doesn't work as well, you're not able to get high off your own supply as well, right? You can't, you're not able to microdose on your own DMT or serotonin as well. It's linked to depression, right? If you want to go hippie woo woo, you're less connected to source, right? Like that's what taps you in. Here's what's really interesting. Then on the flip side, there are mutations in that receptor that are linked to schizophrenia. So this isn't fully proven yet, but my interpretation of this is if it doesn't work as well, clearly they're going different ways, depression versus schizophrenia. We know they're mutated, but do we know if it makes it more or less sensitive? That's what's not concretely proven yet, right? But read between the lines here. You can't feel your own DMT or serotonin as well. You're depressed. But what if you feel it too well? So that means you're actually microdosing too well on your own serotonin and DMT. And then you start hallucinating. You start having, hallucinations. And then, we could go real woo woo for a second, right? People that have experienced these substances, right? Like, are they all merely fictitious hallucinations all the time, right? Or are you sometimes tapping into something higher, whatever you want to call it, right? I think mixture of both. Sometimes you're just tripping, right? But
Yeah.
so you kind of see these connections here, and people that I've worked with, these are people that were either Reiki healers, energy workers, psychics. There are certain mutations there that I've seen that come up across multiple of them. This isn't peer reviewed, right? This is just my experience working with people. I think those are some mutations that make you more sensitive. So the reason why they're psychic or able to tap into source better, they're able to microdose on that better. So someone that has a lower functioning mutation, these are the individuals that I've seen respond really, really well to psychedelic therapy. Now, I can't source, so I don't handle any of that stuff, right? But people are, curious about these things. So on paper, you can kind of see who would respond better. Are there specific studies to confirm this? Not yet, but reading between the lines here, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
There
Okay.
was a dude on the subway this morning. I think he was tapping into some source. I'm like, oh, that gene's working quite well.
Oh man, he was out there.
Yeah, I'm curious
Yeah.
to see where this testing goes because when I first got this report, I was like, oh, it's quite general. But in some regards, like with the LSD, MDMA, ayahuasca report, I was like, it makes me want to be more careful, perhaps, and
Mm,
appreciate that.
yeah.
But
And I think too, I've seen some of those panels and they're great for the information we have currently, right? There's just really, that's a very, very untapped, horizon, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's like, is it useful? Yes. I think as time goes by, a big study just came out that these psychedelics hit so many more receptors than we ever thought. They're hitting dopamine, adrenaline, they're hitting so much more. They're not just the trippy receptor, right? Ketamine doesn't act on that receptor. It's a dissociative anesthetic. So that's why you don't get those types of visuals. But these
right.
psychedelics, they all unite, whether it's through that trippy receptor, NMDA receptor, that's the ketamine one, but we'll kind of go past that. They all raise BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor. That's gasoline, that's fertilizer for your brain cells. I have a mutation in that gene.
So do we.
So, yeah,
Same, same.
yeah. Now, what things raise BDNF? Intense exercise,
Exercise.
Sauna,
sunlight,
lion's
psychedelics.
mane.
What three things do I look? I don't like the lion's mane because my DHT is I don't have super high DHT. That can lower DHT, right? Sorry, getting
That's
Ooh.
nerdy
interesting.
there.
A lot of people are just shoving lion's mane
I
into
pe I have
like,
seen people's lives ruined from lion's mane mushroom because it lowers that DHT. It can really crush it for certain individuals. Yeah.
mm, gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't feel well on that. I felt very emotionally numb and blunted within 2 or 3 days of taking it. I work with people that took it for a few days and they've been messed up for months or years after stopping it. Luckily, I wasn't one of those people, but I'd never recommend lion's mane to people anymore. Can it help? Do some people do great on it? Yes. I just don't even roll the dice. There's a lot of other really great ways to raise BDNF. CBD is a good one. Lithium ortate's my personal favorite supplement. That helps raise BDNF as well. Those are two ones that I really like.
Yeah.
Okay, that is so good to know. Wow. Okay.
So many cautionary tales. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Tyler, you've been so generous with your time. I think we should have you back on to like
Yeah, I'd
do
love
a
to.
part two. There's so
Yeah.
much more to unpack. But to wrap up the episode, we just want to ask for one final piece of advice for our audience that wants to optimize their health. What should they do today if there was just one thing they could do today?
Hmm. I think get rid of all the plastics. I think the microplastics have a lot of people are more aware of them, but I think we're going to look back 10, 20, 30 years from now like, oh my God, this is a lot more of an issue than we thought. A study came out a couple of months ago. The amount of microplastics in the brains of people with Alzheimer's, A, it skyrocketed over the past 20 years, but B, they had orders of magnitude more microplastics. They accumulate in the brain. They had a plastic cafeteria spoon's worth of plastic in their brain. So imagine that much plastic broken up in their brain. It's been found in every biological fluid tested,
Yeah.
in
Sperm, heart.
sperm, in the ovaries, pretty much everywhere. I think that is really got to go. So of course, don't microwave the plastics, but the clothing's really important as well. I'm in the process of. I got my polyester free boxer briefs and I'm looking at all my athletic shorts I wear. They're all 100% polyester. So I've been phasing them out, trying to find brands, right, that really
Yeah.
do that the right way. So I think really trying to limit the plastics, polyester, rugs are a huge one as well. You go on the rug, it releases all that into the air. So the rug I have down here, wool or cotton rugs, furniture you sit on, it all goes into the air and you inhale it and it gets distributed in your body.
That's
Ooh,
great advice.
that's been like my one and two. Replace the athletic wear and underwear and
Yep.
run an air purifier just to
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I'm curious with the microplastics, they're showing up everywhere in the body. Do you think they're just kind of caught at the scene of the crime, or you think they are actually causing Alzheimer's,
Oh no,
infertility.
we know. Oh yeah, no. There's a lot of data showing that these actively do cause inflammation. They
Okay.
activate mast cells. They activate inflammatory pathways. They actually also interact with certain proteins that are linked to energy metabolism. So I think that these also could be playing a role in the obesity epidemic as well. How much of a contributor? I don't know. I'm sure that not moving enough and eating a bunch of crap is a bigger issue, right? But I do think that higher microplastic content in the body, this is just my opinion, can be linked to weight gain or a harder time losing weight. Of course, amongst many other potential factors.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom with us today. We could pick your brain forever and ever. If people want to learn more from you, where can they find you? Where should they go?
Yeah, so at Dr. Tyler Panzer, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, www.drtylerpanzer.com. And yeah, I'm just on a mission to really help people make more informed decisions regarding foods, supplements, lifestyle habits in a world where there's a million and one shirtless influencers or doctors saying everyone needs this or no one needs that. You should not be praising or demonizing any one thing for everyone because we are all genetically unique, except plastics. Screw that for everybody.
Through
Yeah.
plastics, for sure. I agree. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tyler. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Yeah, great to meet you both. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope you guys listening got some value out of this.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone that tuned in. We will see you next time.